to extend an invitation to Dr. Ashra Shukla to deliver the welcome address.
On behalf of IIM Lucknow, I extend a very hearty welcome to all our guests here today. Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, former ambassador, and Dr. Anand Prakash Maheshwari, who is the former IPS officer and of batch 1984 and Director General CRPF. Dr. Balu Kenchappa, Regional Director RPI. Welcome to our campus. It's a matter of pride that India is leading such an important bloc as G20. G20 is a very, very opportune moment for all of us to have these discussions here and to derive major consensus between 20 countries to strengthen the global agenda and solve key developmental challenges like climate change, environment, energy, security challenges, agriculture, sustainability, SDG goals, driven growth, etc. Since they are common issues impacting the whole world, the solution of these problems cannot be derived by only one country. And that's the reason that we need to come together in order to find consensus, commonality between all the countries who are participating in this, because it is impacting the whole world. It requires collective effort and collective accountability too. India has always followed the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We just saw that, and accordingly the G20 theme for the year 2023 is One Earth, One Family, One Future. At IIM Lucknow, we are extremely delighted today to partner with G20 University Connect initiative. As a country, we have got a wonderful opportunity to influence and shape a world that is more just, progressive and sustainable. G20 presidency serves as a platform where we can address the pressing global challenges, championing the inclusive growth and global transformation. Several editions of G20 have already been conducted throughout the country. These events will help us to think globally and connect globally. India's G20 presidency resonates deeply with IIM Lucknow's mission to cultivate socially responsible leaders with a global perspective. As India steers the G20 discourse towards positive change, our students stand poised to contribute, learn and lead in a world that increasingly demands collaborative and impactful solutions. So I take this opportunity to thank RIS, Research and Information Systems for developing countries, and Ministry of External Affairs to giving us this opportunity to host this University Connect today. And not the least, I welcome all the young minds who have found the time to come here and spend your energy towards understanding such a challenging issue, complex issue. Possibly we look forward to all of you because it is going to impact all of us in the future generations. So thank you once again. Thank you very much for this initiative.
I want to convey my appreciation, ma'am, for your words that have been incredibly motivating. Now, I would like to formally invite Ambassador Sanjay to kindly share his insights and perspectives on the matter of the G20 India presidency. Your expertise and thoughts on this subject would be greatly appreciated by all of us.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. I know it's really tough after lunch, these sessions, but we'll share some of our thoughts with you. I'm really delighted to be back in Lucknow. I think I'm coming back after 4 decades. So thank you for inviting us over here. I also wish to thank the Ministry of External Affairs and RIS for this initiative to come and meet with all of you. Can you hear me at the back? Yes. Yeah. Professor Shukla, Dr. Maheshwari, Dr. Bali, members of the faculty, and dear students. Today, before we get on to the theme of the G20 Indian presidency, I wanted to share with you the world we are in. It's a world of transformation. It's an era of transformation, of disruptive changes, of a period in which technology has become so much more dominant. It's dictating the pace of our lives and the way we live. You're having innovations bring about change at a pace that was unprecedented. And also what we do see is that we have the age of data, which helps you in many, many ways to process, to formulate policies that implement them. We're also seeing that the societies are changing. You know, we're getting older. India is still a relatively young society, but we're getting older. And you see this across the developed world in particular. And we also have these challenges of climate change and terrorism, which we all have to confront with. But also, I think what we see is that the manner of economic activity and the geographies in which they are happening is changing. And we are at the heart of all this. And the new world that is coming about is going to depend so much on you. And I wanted to put that as a backdrop because how we react and act today is going to shape the way we are going to be. And the future is very much in the making, particularly for countries and economies like us. Today's theme is about the G20, and I thought I would split it into 3 sections. We would first go through the story of G20, then we'd look at India's priorities during its presidency year, and finally, what does it mean for all of you, for the young people? The G20 story is actually quite old. And I'm very happy that we have a colleague from the Reserve Bank who's here, because the financial institutions were at the core of it. Towards the end of the last century, we faced several economic financial crises. You're familiar with those. And at that point of time, the G7, which was a very dominant body in terms of economic decision-making, felt that they could not do all these decisions together. As Professor Shukla mentioned, these are global problems, and you need global solutions. And so the central bankers of the G7, they formed a forum which expanded it to include emerging countries. And that was 1998, 1999, when this happened. And finance ministers and central bank governors became part of the G20 structure. I remember I was in Japan in 2008 when the G8 Plus summit was taking place in Tokyo, and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was approached by President Bush, the younger Bush at that time, and he was told that they were thinking of doing this at the summit level, the G20 at the summit level. I know later on in 2008, the first G20 summit took place, the inaugural summit in Washington. And since then, initially it was held every 2 years, but subsequently it became an annual feature. The G20 was actually a recognition of the fact that the economic gravity had shifted from across around the Pacific, the Atlantic, to new centers in Asia. You know what happened in East Asia, the Asian tigers, the growth of China, the growth of India. And this meant that when we were resolving global financial economic issues, you had to consult these parties. And that's how the G20 came into being. It represents a very large portion of the world because it's the developed world as well as the emerging countries, 2/3 of the global population, about 85% of the global GDP, about 3/4 of the global trade in goods, and about 80% of the global trade in services. So what we do in G20 is very, very important. Also, it is a very significant weight in terms of the way decisions are taken and the way they influence. So they do influence the multilateral bodies and the other institutions where these decisions are going to be put into the ground. The focus of the G20 in the early days was on economic and financial stability. You know, we in the developed world have always had a higher focus and priority on growth and development. Whereas for the developed countries, the OECD, it was really on stability. And the initial focus of G20 was on that. It was over a period of time that we from the South were able to bring in the new ideas of what we needed as well. Because for a holistic, across the world approach, we needed something more than stability. We needed the cake to get bigger, as they say. The G20 had two specific platforms, or tracks as they call it. The old finance track, which would look at the financial, economic stability and growth issues subsequently over time. And the second which emerged, which is known as the Sherpa track, which is of various political, social, security issues. So the G20 as a body has actually expanded its agenda over a period of time. The presidency of the G20, as you know, is an annual feature, and we do not have a permanent secretariat in the G20. So the decision-making for the agenda setting is done essentially by the presidency. And the presidency works in a troika format, so you work with the previous presidency as well as the new presidency. So there's some continuity in the process, and also so that the decisions that you take, the understandings that you reach, can be taken further. So as you know, we took over the presidency from Indonesia in the Bali summit last year, and we will host the summit next month, and we will hand over the presidency in December. So that's the way the G20 story runs. When we were coming into the presidency, it was really a very difficult time. You know, the economic situation was not very bright. There was the COVID pandemic, which was around, and then soon after we also had the war in Europe, the Ukraine war, and all this actually set about in motion a number of processes which affected the polity, the global security situation, and even hardcore economic reality. So we had again a food security crisis, we had an energy crisis that came about because of these situations. There was an economic slowdown, recession in some countries, and so there was a time when we were taking the presidency that people felt that societies are also getting alienated. What do we do in this very desperate situation? And what we then decided was that we must bring out what is the unique Indian feature, which is to bring about a sense of hope for the world. And that was the basic idea that we had when we were setting the agenda. And therefore we had, on top of the agenda, that we would push for peace and stability, we would push for harmony. These again, as you understand, are very intrinsic features of the way India and Indians are, the way our philosophy of life is. And therefore it was, in a sense, an extension of the way we think, and we are trying to extend it to the G20 and subsequently to the world. We also wanted a more democratic, inclusive approach. Therefore we said that the idea of taking the world as one family, preserving a unique future for the entire global community was also one of the focus focus areas for us. We felt that through this process, we were able to bring back the process of economic growth and the ideas of political and security stability. And finally, we also felt that this was a time to share some of our ethos with the people of the world. And the ethos would be not simply in terms of sharing, going to different places, parts of our beautiful country, but also to share some of the intrinsic values and principles that India stands for. Because in many ways, I think our democracy and development and the demography have been a very positive feature for us, and we want to share that with the rest of the world. It has also produced a very aspirational society, an aspirational, energetic, buoyant economy, and that is something that we wanted to share with the world. It also meant that we increasingly became a member of the Global South and a growing voice of the Global South, and we wanted to share that with the people. So we saw that this was really for us an opportunity to showcase who we were and what we wanted the world to move towards. And this opportunity would come in many ways in the agenda that we would set in becoming a more important voice in the major economic trends and decisions and policies that would be taken, the kind of cooperation that we would be able to bring about. We also knew that the Global South, which has become a very dominant voice today, would be better represented by us, and we wanted to assume that role. So it was a combination of these factors that led to defining India's priorities for the G20. Of course, as we were discussing earlier, the priorities are a continuum, but in some ways, what India has put on the table is also unique in certain manners. And I will outline for you the main amongst these priorities. The first was about the energy transition. We have already made a commitment that we shall be carbon neutral by 2070. There was a big push that we should do this by 2050, but obviously given our development requirements, it would not be practical for us to go that fast in terms of our carbon neutral policy. But we did have a policy, and by 2030, as you know, we plan to be 45% renewable. We also hope to be 50% carbon intensity in the industrial sector. So these are big targets too. So we do have a game plan in which we are going ahead. In energy transition, one of the things that we were focusing on was the use of renewables. And as you know, we have set up the ISA, or the International Solar Alliance, which is an international body which works towards providing technology and finances for solar projects across the world. So we use this as an occasion to showcase the kind of work that ISA does. The other thing that we also focused on, and this came out of the G7 meeting that was held in Hiroshima earlier this summer, was the hydrogen initiative. Now, we've been working on hydrogen for some time, but as you know, there are countries in the G20, particularly Japan and Germany, which have made very, very significant progress. And so a hydrogen task force was set up, which is part of the outcomes of the G20 priorities that we had set that we would share with the rest of the world. The second big idea that we brought was lifestyle for environment, or LIFE as we call it. And this is a somewhat new idea in the G20, because in many ways what you see is that the way industrial development has progressed is one that is, on the one hand, very advanced, but it's also, on the other hand, wasteful. And therefore, your footprint is large, your sustainability footprint is low, your footprint on energy consumption and waste is high, but on sustainability it is low. So how do we bring about this balance? And what we thought was that we would go back to some of the traditional practices that we had and whether we could from that bring about a new understanding of how development should progress so that we do not totally destroy the world around us. LIFE was actually initiated in earlier this year during the visit of the UN Secretary General, and this has become a very major platform for attainment of the SDGs as well. The third one that we focused on was of bridging the divide. And in many ways, if you look around us in society, there is a divide, but when you look at it from the global context, the divide is even more sharp. And this divide is not just in terms of access and opportunity in the social or political world or of economic opportunity, but I think more so in terms of the kind of opportunities that some of the disadvantaged sections continue to have over a period of time. The digital divide, for instance, has become a very important one in this context. And what we realized is that we in India have been able to bring about this new set of digital public goods. What essentially is required is that you need to have a unique identity for the individual. You need to provide access for that individual to various goods and services. And then you need to have an efficient mode of transaction. And that's what will then constitute this public good. So it serves public policy, and when you do it on a digital platform, it achieves these objectives. So whether it is the direct transfer system or the UPIs, or it is the Aadhaar, these are unique digital public goods that have been developed, which we are now sharing with the rest of the world. And realizing some of those benefits is now becoming platforms that others can then bank upon. These become good instruments for better governance. And good governance today is something that is becoming rather short in different parts of the world because of the increased polarization. And so bridging the divide was an important element of it. We're all very caught up with this issue of climate change and how do we bring about a new system in which the climate is much better respected. And the crux of it is the question of finance. This has been a very difficult issue. We had in Paris an understanding about certain funds that would be made available. In fact, the fund was about $100 billion, which would be made available for technologies and projects for adaptation and mitigation of the climate issue. Unfortunately, we have made very little progress on the implementation of that fund, so that countries that are affected can actually take advantage of these technologies and go ahead and reduce their carbon footprint. This remains something that is still a work in progress. This is one of those areas where in the G20 we've been discussing this for a certain period of time, and we've got some conceptual frameworks, but we must admit that we haven't got that much of progress on the ground. It's a very difficult world, and negotiations are often much more difficult when certain interests come into play. But we are plugging ahead. I think in some ways we've been able to make some progress in this since the Bali summit in terms of some commitments that have come for this one. The fifth one that we have brought about is food security. Now, I mean, those of you who are familiar with the economic thinking on this is that food security is actually an issue of balancing the demand and supply functions. It's not that globally there is less food available, but it's just that it doesn't reach the people that need it at a certain point of time. And therefore, you have situations where people miss out on basic nutrition level. This was exacerbated by the Ukraine war recently, and some of the initiatives that were taken, for instance, the Black Sea initiative, which now has just been stopped once again, was to bring about so that it could be made available to places where there was a deficit. On our part, what we did was to put up this idea up front because it had not seriously been discussed in the G20 in the past, and to bring about a food security summit that was held. led by the agriculture ministers, but it is equally connected with the trade activities. Basically, the approach was so that there is adequate remuneration for the farming community, while at the same time you have opportunities for the flow of food items. Including in this was also the question of, do we need to change cropping patterns? And as you know, this year is also the year of the millet. And while millet is an indigenous, which is popular in India, there are other similar indigenous crops in other parts of the world. The idea is to go back to the traditional way and connect it with life so that you have a more sustainable system in which agriculture and food security become interlinked. The sixth one was on global governance issues, particularly financial governance. You know, as the economies of Asia grew, particularly India and China, there was a push towards having greater representation in the World Bank, IMF, so that our voice and our priorities would be taken into consideration. The international organizations have all been doing extremely well. The UN, for instance, has been a very major flag for politics and security, as also for development. But in many ways, they have run short of the priorities that have come up in the time since they were formed. So their priorities are misaligned with the priorities of the world today and what the world needs. And therefore, there is this need for reform. And that's what we are trying to do in the reform and democratization of the international institutions, particularly of the financial institutions. There was good progress on this particular front because we were able to bring about a debt service suspension initiative, which is going to help a very large number of particularly poor countries. About 50 of them who have high levels of debt would benefit from this initiative, and this is one of the good outcomes that will come out of this particular India presidency as well. The seventh one, and I just wanted to do a few of them, is about accelerating SDGs. You know, SDGs have got their 2030 plan, and I think most countries are trying to work towards that national development agenda that all countries of the UN system have brought about. But there's still a lot of work to do in terms of health, education, gender issues, the inclusion aspects. So we are trying to give a good push towards that. And towards this end, in January of this year, Prime Minister had hosted the Global South Summit. And this was a new initiative as well, because it brought together about 125 countries on the platform so that we could discuss what the issues of the South were and how they could be aligned with the SDG process. How are we going to do all this? How have we been doing it? As I said, there are these two platforms, which are the two tracks, the political Sherpa track and the financial track. And in addition, there is actually, in a sense, a third track, which is the institutional or people-to-people track. And this is one of those, for instance. You know, this is where we connect with people and we become part of what the aspirations of the G20 countries and by extension, the global aspirations are. What we wanted to focus on was a high level of engagement. So we had a full series of meetings of all these. And we also included new countries that would come on as guests. So we invited 8 countries and some international institutions which are emerging countries and economies, so that their voice could also become part of this G20 process. So I come to the last one, which is you, and how do we go ahead and how you can think about this. So I go back to what Prime Minister actually said when he launched this initiative of the Youth Connect and the University Connect. And Prime Minister had said, and I think this is very important to realize because it's a conceptual framework, that we try and tackle challenges by collaboration rather than by conflict. And when you take this at a higher country-wide level, this has so much sense that, we could avoid so many of the pitfalls that can happen. The second thing that he mentioned was about technology and how technology can be used as a vector for scaling up. Because today, the needs for many of us are so big. At an institution like this, you can have these tremendous incubation centers and startups, and you can bring about this change, which will be big for the rest of the community as well. The third thing that he talked about was the importance of digital public goods, which I mentioned about, and how they can extend the reach. And in a sense, when you make them open platforms in many other countries, as is happening today with UPI, for instance, will then be able to take benefit from that. The fourth thing that he talked about was that we have to articulate the voice of the global south. There is this gap that continues, and despite the fact that in the G20 we are all on the same table, the aspirations of these two groups are not entirely aligned, and therefore the idea is to mainstream some of these global south aspirations into the mainstream of policy making, so that we can then have a more coherent approach. And the fifth thing is so intrinsic to India, which is this trusteeship approach, where you live in harmony with the community and environment around you, so that you all are living in balance. I know there has been a lot of activity in this institute, and I congratulate you for that on the G20 issues. At the end of the day, you are the citizens and the leaders of the future. And this is an initiative which brings the North and the South, developed and the emerging together on the same platform. This is a platform that can have and make substantive change, not only in the lives of the G20 members, but of the global community. So you will have a meaningful voice. And I think at the end of the day, I see you as the people who will make this world a better place. I must admit that our generation has made progress on several fronts, but we've also put up challenges for you, whether it is climate change or the fundamentalism, terrorism issues. So those are challenges that we have set behind for you to resolve. But I'm sure and confident that you will make a better world, and the G20, in a sense, could be an instrument for that. And I could not finish with that. Thank you for your patience.
I extend my heartfelt gratitude, sir, for delivering a speech that was genuinely filled with inspiration and has left a lasting impact. Your words have truly resonated with us. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Anand to share his expertise and thoughts on the G20 India presidency with us. Your insights are highly anticipated.
Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Director, Madam Moksha, Ambassador Sanjay Kashar, and my friend Dr. Balu, and all the friends present here in this auditorium. My work has been made easy as all the contents and the context of G20 presidency have been explained in detail by Ambassador Bhattacharya. Thank you, sir. It makes my task easy. I have placed myself as a student and see how I can gain in terms of the University Connect. what all is happening, what we are looking forward to. So we are in a management institute, and to me management means manage, make and keep for technology. How do we manage the technology? Because G20 is primarily focusing on technology. The way we have globally connected society made easy through technology in the cyber platforms. That we can connect with anybody and everybody and learn. And for a learner, there is a guru at every doorstep. So we have the holistic digital delivery systems. Whether you have to order a pizza, whether you are booking your airline tickets, whether you are doing a commercial deal, or whether you are looking for any material of learning or knowledge, or whether you are talking to any person in any of these countries which are part of the global society. So this has been made easy through technology. So we have the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We have the blended existence. The blended means we can physically contact, we can also contact virtually. It can be, this term can be used anyways. We use it in terms of blended learning. We learn physically also, and we learn through virtual modes. So it is a journey. It's a journey from silos to the sustainable existence on common platforms. And you have to understand this because this is going to remain with us throughout the life. Throughout the life it's going to remain with us. Two important statements which I learned when I started my career, and I am grateful to my mentors. Two things they told me. Number one, only those who know how to merge will eventually re-emerge. I repeat, only those who know how to merge will eventually re-emerge. This is the rule of the nature also. We are all part of the nature. Much has been spoken about the nature and the climate change and how we exist together. And number two, therefore, the second rule which was taught to me was the way we nurture nature, becomes our culture. We are so much part of the nature is within us. I mean, even in our philosophy, they say Panch Tattva. We are all made of that. I am not going to that philosophy right now. But then I repeat, and this explains most of the things why we are in a state of climate change where everything is going out of the calculation. Everybody is, perplexed what to do. And it is causing a continuous chain of problems. All of you must have been reading about it. So the way we nurture nature becomes our culture. These are the things. Now with this, I come to what, as a student, I can gain. Now think of these 20 countries with which we have a connect. All of them have their SWOT analysis. What are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats? And we are connected to these countries, then we can learn about the new vectors of success. They will take us to optimize us for a higher equilibrium. We can learn from somebody's culture. We can learn from how they have tackled the nature, what were the limitations before them, and what innovative ways they adopted. And as a student, how can I connect and learn? From there, that is a take for me. Some eureka can take place. I get a solution, keep working. I'll come to that also, how the eureka takes place. At least it happened in my life. Now, these powerful vectors which we observe because we know how to merge together and re-emerges because it is a dynamic world. Even in our body, so many cells die and so many new cells. What I was 5 minutes before, I am not the same right now. It's happening with the nature, with the whole environment. So the merging, re-emergence is a continuous process. So these powerful vectors we have to recognize, and we can collectively do that. And it has been made easy through technology. I can do my self-audit on a daily basis and do my validation. Where am I failing? What are the rigidities I have to give up, and what are the floats which have been keeping me engaged unnecessarily or helping the drivers of growth for me? This University Connect I can develop when these countries come together, connecting with the youth of all those countries who are aspiring for their future, for the new world and the new world culture which you will be creating for yourself. So collaboration is the key. And collaboration means what? You empower the person with whom you are collaborating and you make him an equal stakeholder. No collaboration will succeed unless the other people with whom you are collaborating, you empower them and make them equal stakeholders. Even you won't like to collaborate with anybody who is not empowering you in any way, you are not a gainer, and he is not making you a stakeholder. So when we go with the theme of global cooperation, then this traditional theme of Wasat and Kotamukam, the collaboration, and we have to understand it in terms of what it means to us and how I am going to implement it in practice. There are certain challenges also. India itself is a conglomeration of so many cultures. Over 700 languages, over 1500 ethnic groups and subgroups. I have led a force of 3.5 lakh warriors, which is the only counterinsurgency force from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Gujarat to Northeast. You find so much of the variation. People from all the states come together to work in this force. So this type of diversity, how do we develop that? So another important thing that we take the leadership, then we have to be neutral. And neutrality means what? My experience says that neutrality means that you recognize the difference. Yes, there will be difference between you and me. Then you give dignity to that person, also to that difference, and then you give a space to the person to grow. And then we collaborate to improve together. So this neutrality factor is important, and this is my CRPF experience, and it's one of the neutral force known, because over a period of time, people coming from so many states, so many cultures, they all work together, and so do they perform in the other armed forces. So this means that we recognize this, we give dignity to this, their status, and then we evolve together to find those common workable spaces. Now, there are two things again. When we go over to the virtual learning or the blended learning, there are two things. There's one is experiential truth, and another is the observed truth. You read 10 books on Himalaya, you can also talk about Himalaya. In comparison to one who has himself gone to Himalaya twice, so he will have experiential truth and people will have observed truth, and they will be different. So this is the risk factor when we are onto the blended learning of the virtual platforms, and that was suggesting a precaution. I'm just saying that that's a suggestion we have to do, because I come from a security force, so we have so many things in mind. How it happens? Initially, the world was governed by physical force. Then came the political force. Then came the economic force. Then came the data as power. And now, cognitive controls. Now, the latest power is cognitive controls, control the mind. So there will be so many narratives flown out. And people will try to radicalize you. This is the hidden this thing. That if you don't get radicalized, you don't lose the balance. I recall from Gautam Buddha's teachings, follow the middle path. Why? Because any of the extremity will lead to some sort of radicalization, and that is not good. So this is one of the risks which will come. We have to, not that, we have to make use of this opportunity, but we have to also see that the way we are governing, because I believe that every machine comes with a manual except the human being. And the way the mind functions, the mind through senses absorbs everything, whatever you are seeing in the internet, here or there, even you are looking at me, your mind knowingly and knowingly gathering so many things. So you will be gathering so many things. And as a student, you have to then convert all that into a manure which can help you all to grow. And that is a big challenge. So all these challenges will be coming, so we have to see what is relevant for me. And the things which have made me work is that you should be clear about your direction, you should be clear about your intentions, and then you should be in the moment fully committed to your job. The whole year you read so many things, you may not understand that the night before the examination you do understand all those things because the mind knows that this night you are serious, you are giving your 100%. So this is the power of mind you have to recognize. And when you are traversing on this journey of going on digital platforms, when you are traversing this journey of going to different cultures, there are different SWOT analysis. What is coming out of it? Then that suggestion, wisdom, you must, and therefore, have a good manner, be in consultation with each other, what is happening. So, as I said, the experiential truth and Indian ethos, the Indian history, and whatever the culture we have is full of that. In fact, I'll just take a minute to say I was in one of the interviews with UPSC, and one of the girls from Haryana came. They said, sir, our culture has been so rich. The only thing is that the knowledge transferred by mouth from one elder to the other, but the logic did not get transferred. So we left so many things, and we came up with so many examples. Like we went in for chemicals, and then we again realized that, redundancy of using so many chemicals and land and fertilizers and this and that gave back to so-called organic farming at a very different name. And then she again spoke about the way we are coming back to, even in the architectural field, we are going back to how the ancestors used to do the, and we are the whatever style. So she gave not many examples, even in the medicines and other things. So many things will be happening with you, growing. G20 is a good initiative. We learn from each other's, and there are so many fields, as Basu said, right from finance to the various aspects which we have to grow. And as I said, we cannot grow unless we help our fellow people to grow. Therefore, empowering them and then taking them along will lead to our growth also. So these are the things as a student, as learners, we have to pick up. And it varies, and it is applicable to anything, to socio-economic, cultural development, all aspects of development you can think of. And with this, I wish all of you best in your future endeavors, and a new, empowered, young generation will come to find a better world and lead the world in the most fabulous way it should be, and overcome the challenges which have come before us. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
I extend my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for generously imparting your insightful perspectives and thoughts. Now, I would like to invite Dr. K. Chappa to share his expertise and thoughts on the G20 India presidency with us.
Good evening, Professor Shukla, Brother Acharya, and Dr. Anand Prakash, Vaishnavi, and dear friends. In the last 40 minutes or so, the two great minds have shared their perspective on G20. When I was asked to come here, I'm wondering what is the occasion. So this occasion is so-and-so. University Connect to the G20. And the topic was not really clear to me what I was supposed to speak. And as I was coming here, I thought I'd just leave you one or two strands of thought. I'm not going to speak about G20 per se, but G20 has a lot of working groups under the Sherpa as well as the finance track. The finance track, at least the four major finance tracks are working groups: sustainable finance, infrastructure, and international financial architecture, and then one more. So the international financial architecture, I thought I'll just make some of my thoughts place in front of you. In 1971, the finance secretary, the secretary of finance, or the treasury secretary, that's what they call it in US, seemed to have said that dollar is my currency, but it's your problem. Dollar is my currency, but it's your problem. That was in 1971. Now we are 2023, more than 50 years. Now, even now, the same statement holds true. But only thing, we are saying that. Earlier, the Treasury Secretary used to proudly say that, rather, how I can say, out of pride, perhaps he must be saying that dollar is my currency, but it's your problem. But the whole country, whole world is saying that dollar is your currency, but my problem. I think you appreciate the tone and tenor of the second statement. Dollar is your currency, but my problem. Why I am saying this? The US of 70s and US of 2020, there's a big difference. The global imbalances are increasing, and the threat of US creating more trouble for the global financial architecture. At least that is what the experts. I am not an expert. At the outset, I must tell you, I think those of Reserve Bank. So the experts are talking that US could possibly default. But they also sometimes they say that when default in the sense what? Default in servicing their obligation. Only a couple of I think last week, the Fitch rating, they downgraded from AAA to AA. There is a problem with the markets, including Indian stock market, you all know. So what if eventually the problem, the crisis increases? What is the situation we in India could face, or we, or collectively, the developing economies could face? It's difficult to fathom. Rather, you should not even think of. Rather, you wish that doesn't happen. Because we have to keep saying that dollar is your currency but my problem. Therefore, don't exaggerate my problem. Somehow you stay put. It's better that you stay put, stay strong in everybody's interest. That is the tone and tenor of the economy, tone and tenor of the policy maker, tone and tenor of the central bank governors seem to be. Nobody wants problems in US. Nobody wants US failing. It's massive. It takes time to develop the alternative. There is no alternative, at least at the time being. That's how you keep listening to internationalization of rupee, internationalization of yuan, Chinese currency. Why is it that? How long you can keep looking at dollar as a reserve currency? When no longer the strength is there, internet strength is there. Economists are talking about overall. The dollar is surviving, the dollar is staying where it is, thanks to central banks. In Japan, China, India, Korea being the biggest reserve holder. What do I mean when I say reserve? all reading newspaper. Reserve Bank publishes in press release 600 billion foreign exchange reserve. What is this foreign exchange reserve? Technically, in essence, all of you are, most of you at least must have done your portfolio management, portfolio theory, CMPM, etc. You will think about what is this managing this $600 billion reserves, which is predominantly invested in US treasuries, Japanese bonds, pound denominated sovereign bonds, and euro bonds. Imagine the kind of the risk sensitivity the country carries by holding $600 billion in foreign currency bonds. The percentage, maybe the composition of this reserve, how much is with the US Treasury, how much is with the Japan, or how much is with the pound, that is not publicly available. Highly sensitive. Nevertheless, it's a fact that our resources are invested in these predominantly these four currencies, foreign securities. If default, but what we are thinking, that happens, who is the loser? If the AAA becomes AA rating, what is the valuation losses? So you apply your CFPM and then think about it, your bond valuation and whatnot. On the basics of finance, you apply it and then look at what will happen to the $600 billion portfolio. So that is we are talking about in India. China has almost 3 trillion in the resource. So the global imbalance, we call that, we are happy to announce that we are getting FDI, FII, investment and everything. And then on the one hand, we were proud, on the other hand, we also often keep listening, what is this dollar is 83, 75, 5 years back, it was 69, it was 39 when I was young at 2011, 2009, 30 and say 83. Where do you want to see dollar? You are now students. You also read the foreign exchange, international finance also as an optional or compulsory paper. Do you think that 83 rupees is a optimal value? Do you think that it should have been 88 or 78? Or at least you should know what happens if it goes to 78 and what happens if it becomes 88. 100 or maybe 50 because of US crisis. Just stop by and then keep thinking then what happened. That's what the international financial architecture that is closely connected with the balancing the global interest. There was a situation I still remember that was in 2004. Dr. Vaidyanathan was giving some lecture on public debt. In fact, I still remember at the end of this lecture, I still remember the sentence, he was even warning the US that you keep your house in order, manage your public debt better. Otherwise, you're going to create trouble for everybody. The debt GDP ratio of US is so high, it's highly unsustainable, contributing to the troubles, tribulations of other countries. So G20 also in a way seized up a battle. Naturally, whatever that happens, it has to happen gradually. That's how you look at Reserve Bank governors announcement offer. That we are not going to target an 88 or 83 or 81 or 78. We just don't want volatility. We just don't want the 83 to go to 88 overnight, 84 overnight. We don't want steep appreciation or steep depreciation in our currency. Both are in a way, as a distinct source destabilizing. So therefore, managing the currency, not only for India, many such countries, in Indonesia, China, is very challenging. You as students, finance students, I'm sure these things, such not just, it's just a, initiative of the RIS, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Physical Affairs. It's not that. Certainly, the message at the global level, message at the G20 level, that what is being discussed there, should also come down to this article IIM Lucknow. It is not just coincidence. It is not just, I think it is not just compliance that government wants that the IIM should do. May not be. We're lucky that at least this is being celebrated. We're lucky that the knowledge of G20, interest of G20, the thinking of G20 that being brought to a college or the classroom institution like this. I think I have around 10 minutes or so in order to bore you with the other things. So that I mentioned to you about the internationalization of rupee. Why is that India is aspiring that our currency should be acceptable? In simple terms, what is happening in because of Ukraine war? There is sanctions that we are not supposed to pay in dollars. We are not supposed to pay in dollars to buy the oil from a specified country. And then your interest is the US interest, or your interest is the Ukraine interest. You like it or not, you have to take sides. You do not have independent view. You are dependent on the currency for buying goods and services. Instead of that, look, my Tirupur textile manufacturing fellow wants to invoice in only rupee, 80 rupees for baniya, 30 rupees for whatever. I don't want to convert it to 50 cents or $1 or $2 and then wait for specified number of dollars after 3 months or 6 months as a serious honor. I don't want to run the exchange risk. I say that this is my cost of production and this is what my price. If you want, you give me. Basically, making the rupee acceptable in more and more countries. Therefore, they deal with me, I deal with them. And the more I deal with them, I have the command. And I kill the uncertainty. Remember, what internationalization of rupee brings is that it addresses the so-called exchange risk. In simple terms, uncertainty of the receipt, realization of the specified amount of Indian currency. Because you get translated, then there is an exchange rate load, margin, what you call it. It eats up a little amount of your profit. But if you start pricing in rupee and you get it in rupees, and you have to be very free of exchange risk. Like the thought process goes on, and then the efforts are on. To end, I think we should all pray, or rather we should think, we should do all that is required. That the international financial architecture is stable. If US fails and India cannot, say that I will not get affected. There will always be an adverse impact on the countries. So therefore, it's only the G20 type of organizations that bring in some kind of sanity. Otherwise, it's everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your unique perspective on the G20 presidency. I would now like to hand over to Ms. Niyati Singh, consultant IIS, to moderate the Q&A session.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the lead speaker, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, Dr. Anand Prakash Maheshwari, Dr. Balu Kenchappa for their illuminating presentations and speeches. I would also like to thank Professor Archana Shuklaji, Dr. Priyanka Sharma ji and IIM Lucknow for facilitating this wonderful event. A special shout out to Mr. Balaji Kendre who helped in the organization of the event. And most of all, thank you to our wonderful audience, the future leaders of tomorrow who have been so very patient and receptive. The Indian G20 presidency is a really proud moment for India and for 1.4 billion citizens. Now, as a fellow IIM Calcutta alumnus, I know all the students must be bubbling with questions. Our esteemed panel would be delighted to answer any questions you may have. But before that, I have some questions for all of you. One second, we also have goodies to all of our bright audience to get some of the answers, right? So think of this as like a rapid fire round, but with a buzzer, but the buzzer is your hand. So whoever raises the hand first, and whoever grabs my attention, I'll just point out and you may answer. So I'll start off really easy, and then I'll kind of dial up the difficulty. Is that okay? Are you guys ready? Yes. Okay. So the first question, when is the G20 Leaders Summit scheduled to take place? You, there, at the back? Perfect. Yes, that's the correct answer. Just pass on it's the girl at the back there. Okay, the next question. Which country hosted the previous G20 presidency? I can't give it up to all of you. But, okay. When did India take over the G20 presidency?
This year.
What is the date?
December. 1st December 20. 1st December.
1st December. The person who said that is the correct answer. Okay. Which country will host the next one?
Brazil.
Okay. How many countries are a member of the G20? This is a big question.
19.
Yes, who said 19? It's 19 plus the European Union. India has proposed the inclusion of another permanent member of the G20. Who is that?
Spain. Turkey.
No.
Turkey.
No. Would the panelists like to take this question? Yes, perfect. Really one chocolate girl to the panelists. It's the African Union, AU. Which year was the G20 founded? 1999. Yes, that's the correct answer. What was the main impetus for the formation of the G20? IIM grads should know this answer. Which financial crisis? The Asian financial crisis. Okay. How many working groups are a part of the Sherpa track? 13. Yes. Who is the Indian G20 chief coordinator? He's the Sherpa, which is my next question, but you get a chocolate too. No, but who knows this answer? Yes. No, that's the G20 Sherpa, he said. Yes, perfect. Okay, so the Indian G20 presidency proposed a new engagement group to the G20. Which one is that? Any guesses, guys? This is, very relevant to the Indian context.
Startup 20.
Yes, perfect. It's the Startup 20. Okay. We also introduced a Sherpa track working group. Which one is that? Nobody knows? The Indian G20 presidency also introduced a new Sherpa track working group. Which one is that?
Trade and tourism.
No, that was already there. Okay, so does anybody know?
Finance.
Okay, so this is the disaster risk reduction working group, which is very, very relevant in today's context. India is championing a campaign that puts individual behavior at the forefront of global climate action. What is this mission called?
Mission Life.
Yes, life. Okay, this is the last question, guys. Who can tell me the full form of the P3 in context of life? What is P3? No. Yes, perfect. It's pro-planet people. Please give him a chocolate. Okay, guys, amazing. Thank you for entertaining me and being a wonderful audience. I now request you to please ask the esteemed panel any question you may have in the interest of time. I'll try to take as many questions as possible, but I request you to please keep the question concise and also address the specific panelists you would like to ask the question to. Could I please invite the panelists on the stage so that the committee can answer the questions? Guys, please a round of applause for the panelists. Okay, that's for can you have a mic? Does anybody have questions? Yes, please.
Can I get the mic, please?
Yeah, on.
Good evening, panel. My question is, how does India G20 presidency plan to promote collaborative solutions among member nations that contribute to both global economy, progress and fostering of peace and harmony, while one of Indian states burning for the past 3 months?
Could you please address the question to a specific panelist, if you could?
Okay, so how is India planning to promote?
Who would you direct the question to?
Anyone can answer.
Sir, could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so India's G20 presidency plans to promote collaborative solutions among members nations that contribute to both global economic progress and the fostering of peace and harmony, while one of Indian states is burning for the past 3 months.
Okay. You want to take some time? Okay, all right. So we're going to take 5 questions. Who's going to? Does anyone? Okay, the next question is there. So we take 5 questions and then we rearrange it amongst us as an answer. All right?
Good evening, everyone. My question is regarding G20's impact. In the last 2-3 years, we have seen 2 black swan events as Ukraine-Russia war and COVID crisis. What has been the impact of G20 in dealing with this? Is really G20 relevant today?
Do you have anyone who want to address?
Anyone who wants to.
Yes, please.
So, a very major topic for the current G20 summit was the adoption of cryptocurrency. And
Just 1 second, the mic.
So, a very major topic that was covered during the G20 meetings was the adoption of cryptocurrency. So, what's your point of view on that?
Amazing. Anyone else has a question? Okay, we have 2 hands there and those are the last 2 questions. So, yeah.
Hi, this is Shani. My question is for Mr. Bhattacharya. Basically, privatization has been a buzzword, especially in India of late, with the startup culture and everything. Considering that G20 is about economic collaboration across nations, where do you think MNCs figure here? Considering that many multinational corporations, especially the Fortune 100s, are growing more powerful than countries themselves, what will be their role in transferring the best practices and fostering such collaboration?
Thank you. And the last question.
This is more of in relation to the net neutrality of carbon emissions by 2070. There is a growing concern among greenwashing in various industries. How would G20 address that and ensure credibility, especially in relation to transfer of carbon credits, etc.?
Transfer of power to, could you just repeat your question?
Can you address the transfer of carbon credits among various countries, companies, and how would G20 really ensure that actual carbon neutrality rather than greenwashing related to certain industries?
He's asking regarding the framework of carbon credits across the world. All right, thank you so much for your questions. The panelists will answer them now. Yes. So, with the growing importance of MNCs, how do you factor that into? So please, you may answer the question now. Yeah, just whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, about the question asked about the peace initiatives by India, receiving the Manipur money. It is unfortunate, whatever has been happening in Manipur is not denied. We all are concerned. But when we talk of the peace initiative by the country and our faith and our trust in the peace processes, that is a long-term game. And the way the Manipur problem has been emerging, everybody is concerned. And it has certain historical reasons, there are certain reasons where probably there were wrong timings or things were not handled or not predicted in time. This will come up after the due investigations into the process. But it in no way it undermines the zeal and the initiative and the faith the people of this country have in the peace processes, and we have been propagating the world over the same. So we are equally disturbed by that, and now everybody has been activated, all the agencies are taking care, and we believe that things come back to normalcy as early as possible.
Could I kind of look at some of these questions as well? Firstly, when we do the agenda, just as a background, there are lots of issues that are, in a sense, domestic issues, but are not divorced from the regional context. And I think in some ways, when an issue becomes something that impacts the wider region or the world, it then becomes something that the G20 tries to look at. And of course, from the outset, the focus had really been on economic financial stability issues, and then subsequently, of course, various other kinds of security issues. Let me take up the issue of COVID in Ukraine that was brought up. I think these have been the two most disruptive elements that have happened in the last few years. COVID was a pandemic of unprecedented proportion, which affected populations, societies, economies globally. We ourselves had felt its effects as well in India, but this created a huge disruption across the world. The Ukraine issue was another disruptive one, and the importance of that was that in some ways it was really one in which war came back to Europe. And Europe, which had been taking part or engaged in peacekeeping activities or fighting terrorism in different parts of the world, had been somewhat immune from such activities themselves. And so the reality hit that the global south has actually been facing for a very long time. We've seen wars in our neighborhood and in many other parts of the developing world, so we know what it is. But when it happened in Ukraine, and then the impact of it was not just in terms of what the countries involved were, but something that affected as I mentioned, the food security issue, the financial, the growth program. Today, what you see, for instance, on climate change, Europe is redrawing the options that it has on its green agenda. So countries are going back from natural gas to other forms of fossil fuel which have higher rates of emission. There is talk of going back to the nuclear energy option. So it has much wider ramifications. And therefore, it is very important for all of us to look at these issues. And if you look at the G20 agenda, and I mentioned some of them, how we look at the food crisis, the food security issue, how we look at the energy transition issue, these are very central to what we are trying to do. There was a question on the MNCs. You know, the corporate sector is very much a part of this in many ways. It comes up not very directly in the finance track, but in the institutional track, where chambers of commerce and industry become part of it. Today, what we see is that in addition to governments, which do a lot of the negotiations, we as diplomats are essentially negotiators, we find that there are non-state actors which have become important elements of the negotiation process in defining the agenda, particularly the economic agenda. And in this, the MNCs, the corporate sector, has become the most critical agent. So for instance, when you look at important discussions that are coming up on technology, for instance, on data, the corporate sector is a very important element of that. I don't know if you're familiar with the way in which the data negotiations, because data at the end of the day will have to be a multilaterally negotiated option. So in the United Nations, there were 3 separate working groups that were looking at data negotiations. And these were looking at the data management, the data privacy, the data security issues. And the corporate sector was helping the governments to conduct these negotiations. It was found over a period of time that this was an inadequate approach, and the global governance of data, which is what the UN Secretary General transformed the way in this data is now being discussed. It's now from those 3 working groups moved into a data governance negotiation discussion, in which the non-governmental entities, including the corporate sector, are directly involved in this process. So this is just an example where the corporate sector will become an important and increasingly leading player in these global negotiations and in the G20 process as well. You've seen how the negotiations regarding patents and intellectual property rights, for instance, has been in which the pharma sector has been at the lead, and this is another one in which the agenda setting is done entirely by, or almost entirely by, the corporate sector. I would just also wish to make a point about the energy credits, which was the carbon credits. You know, what is happening today is that on the climate change discussion, which has got 2 aspects to it, which is of the emissions and the control of it, and how the global community can collaborate, there are several steps that come up. So typically, whenever anybody has power, this is real power, they are most reluctant to give it up. For instance, you don't see the reform of the United Nations Security Council taking place because those who have the veto power don't wish to share it with others. And similarly, when it comes to economic power as well, this thing about sharing is a very difficult thing to do. And so, when the climate discussions were taking place, there were various kinds of control that were sought to be exercised by those who are today in a commanding position. Today, for instance, access to energy is seen as a prerequisite for economic development and growth. And therefore, those who have that economic power and growth would wish to preserve their contributions to the energy situation or crisis, whichever way you wish to look at it. And therefore, they wish to bring about situations. So, Carbon credits is one way of doing this. So when the manufacturing hub was shifted from the Atlantic to the Pacific coast in China, for instance, or in other parts of ASEAN, essentially what they did was the carbon emissions were transferred from OECD countries to the developing world. This is an ongoing process. We need the employment, the growth in order to go ahead to meet the aspirations of our people. And what is the way that you negotiate them? So for instance, there was a point of time, those of you who are familiar with international trade would know where labor and human rights have become issues. So free trade, fair trade are ideas that come up. Today, for instance, we have ESG, and I think many of you who are going to be in the corporate world will be negotiating these issues, because today there is legislation in some of the European countries already, and it's going to spread across, where ESG will become an element of the way in which there is transfer of technology, there's transfer of profits, there's transfer of trade. So these will all happen today. When we are discussing the hydrogen issue, why is it that Japan is so keen to work with certain developing countries? It's because it sees an opportunity for energy credits being transacted. But of course, it also does bring about a certain impediment in the manner in which free trade happens. But these are trade-offs that you have to negotiate, so we have to be realistic about it. I think the rest of it.
There was a question on cryptocurrency. See, whenever you look at the cryptocurrency, just think about what is money. In our +2, we studied that money is what money does. That's it. Money is what money does. So all those things that you can do, what money can do, that becomes money. Question is that whether you're a crypto, can you do what money can do? Consistently. A bank account, UPI, what it can do, whether your crypto can do, the currency in your pocket, coin in your pocket, whether crypto can do. I can exchange my Indian currency with the US dollar. There is a market. Can you try doing Bitcoin with the Ethereum or other thousands of such currency? The transaction cost is something like 20%. In some cases it will be 30%, 10%. When you take the rupee and convert it to cryptocurrency, you lose almost 10% of the rate that has been quoted. When you bring back from the Bitcoin, again back to rupee, again you lose 10-15%. What is this transaction cost? Where is this transaction 15%? Who is making it? Can it survive? Can it be efficient? Assuming that cryptocurrency has to be encouraged. There is a case, in this case, for cryptocurrency. But there is no case from the country's sovereignty. There is no case from the country's monetary policy. That's all higher things. Assuming that the cryptocurrency can work as a does all the things that money does, that's a store of value, exchange, and whatever not. At any point of time, unless otherwise, the money, please remember, money is nothing but the borrowing by the government. Just for information, there is a 31 lakh crore is what the currency circulation in 2023 as of March 31st. 31 lakh crore. That Reserve Bank shows that it is a liability to the country, you can say. It's a liability of the Reserve Bank. 31 lakh crore. That is what the money circulation in your hands and bank hands. Equivalent. What is my asset? Asset is my 600 billion reserves that I am holding it in various countries. And also, that will be around 60-70% of my 31 trillion consists of foreign bonds. 30-40% or 20% varying from year to year. It consists of Government of India bonds. For every rupee in your pocket, I have given it a Government of India bond. Who? Reserve Bank. But every cryptocurrency, every unit of cryptocurrency if you have, whether government of India bond I am having, you give me your money back currency, I will give you government of India bond. The government of India with the bond, when you go and encash, whether you get it, that's a theoretical question. But if you can buy the currency, whatever rupee you have, and you can buy government of India bond, the interest bearing bond, you can convert it. But the cryptocurrency, anybody can keep assuring you that I will give you all this. Whether the government of India will give you, whether the US government will do, this is the problem. So therefore, the cryptocurrency, it could be hype, it could be fad, it could be, it's defined in varieties of ways. Okay. It is mostly fictitious. It has no underlying value, underlying support. So if you would like to read the official version or the view of RBI is at least 4 times has alerted public, be careful. There is no legal backing for this currency because legal effects are not yet clear. So there is a couple of speeches are there, the deputy governor has agreed, and then we have completely taken a bold view of the decision that this is our view in so far as cryptocurrency. That's pretty well much at variance with the southern countries where crypto already is. In so far as the bigger MNC corporations, the future role of governments, because some of you said that the MNCs have grown beyond the countries. Yes, for example, with the market capitalization of 3 trillion, I don't know how many countries have most of 3 trillion market capitalization. The country, that's if market capitalization can be converted, equated to GDP. Anybody's guess. I don't have the number, how many countries are bigger than Apple. There is a situation also, for instance, Venezuela. Venezuela oil company, the local oil company has a better rating than the Venezuela government. The sovereign rating was inferior as compared to the oil company. There is a situation like that. But the question is that what you ask is right, that what is the role of government in such to address these big MNCs? We seem to be controlling more than the government. That's where the public policy comes into picture, that's where the competition commission, how can the moderating you have been seen, how there are talk about Google should be split into pieces and then it should be made public. The public should be holding the majority stake, whatnot. So the public policy get evolved. Whether we want perfect competition, in economics, perfect competition is the best. There are markets, capitalists, that's what we have pursued. So whether it's gone bad, nothing wrong, wherever there is, that has to be addressed. Thank you.
I would like to thank our distinguished panel for their illuminating answers. I would also like to thank our bright audience for all their wonderful questions and for enriching the conversation with your youthful energy and vigor. I would now like to invite Professor Archana Shuklaji on stage so that her along with the 3 panelists can present the awards to the G20 Pre-University Student Activity events. I'll be announcing the winners now. For the Model 20, the first best country, Team Italy, Shalini K and Achintan Sarkar. Please give a round of applause. For the second runners-up county, Team Russia, Yash Raj and Lenin Mahila. Please. Yash Raj back on the stage, please. And now for the article writing competition. Akshat Thakur of IIM Lucknow is the winner. The second winner is Vaibhav Gupta. The third winner is Gopalakrishnan CM. I don't think they are here, but we will present them. Yes, we have a round of applause for the winner, and we'll have certificates distributed to them later. From the competition Art Strokes, Ayushi Thakur, first prize. The second prize goes to Sparshita Verma. The third prize goes to Sarthak Pita. They're again not here, but we will present a certificate to them later. And for the fourth competition, which was the G20 quiz, the winners, the first one is Ashutosh Mishra and Atharva Soman. The second prize went to Pratik Gupta and Jignasa Jain. The third prize goes to Rohit Srivastava and Saket Kumar Jha. Please, a huge round of applause for all the winners and all the teams. And thank you so much, ma'am, for the panelists for doing this.
As we come close to this remarkable event, it is my distinct honor to stand before you and acknowledge the invaluable contribution of our esteemed panelists. These individuals have generously shared their time, knowledge, wisdom, and enriching our discussions and enlightening others. I would like to invite Dr. Archana Shukla and Priyanka ma'am to extend mementos to the panelists. It's a great honor to present Dr. Sanjay Bhattacharya, Dr. Sanjay Bhattacharya with the memento. Next, we will present the memento to Dr. Anand Maheshwari. Now I would request ma'am to present the memento to Dr. Kendra. Now we would request Ms. Neerti to come on the stage for her memento and helping us throughout the event. A big round of applause for Neerti. Now, on behalf of the IIM Lucknow community, I would request Dr. Priyanka to share a vote of thanks.
So, thanks everyone. So it's a big job. Saying vote of thanks after such phenomenal discussions, such insightful discussions, knowledge that we got on this topic of Bharat 2023 G20. I would say that today's event very, very rightly signified the peace, sustainability, harmony, hope, the kind of ideas which emanated or which were the rooting for this whole concept of India's presidency for G20. I would specifically like to quote some of the very important learnings from what our speakers talked about, and that would essentially be my vote of thanks. And
I sincerely thank each one of the dignitaries to take out time from their busy schedule, and thank Near team for drawing this whole event, for connecting with us, giving us this platform to brainstorm and platform to my students to know more about the significance of this particular event. If I have to take a few words from Mr. Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, very rightly the kind of evolution of G20 story that you beat and how we have come thus far from the economic crisis, evolution of G20 from G8, it's 5, and your priorities as you know, as India's priorities in terms of the concept of lifestyle for environment, which involves emphasizing the rich culture, Indian values, implementation of debt services, suspension initiatives for India's financial global governance. I think these are very, very noteworthy. And a lot of you who are interested into public policy and those who are interested into economic growth, financial matters, some of these things will go a very, very long way and things to ponder about. Thank you to Dr. Anand Prakash Maheshwari and some of the key learnings about the world of transformation which technological revolution is bringing at such a fast pace. The emergence of new vectors of success measurement with respect to innovation in the G20 countries as they are transforming, and CRPF's culture of neutrality, which was something very unique and new that we got to know from you in terms of acknowledging the differences and treating them with dignity while moving forward. That's an important thing. And thank you so much, sir, again for taking out time for us. And Dr. Balu Kenchappa, thank you so much for telling us about the role of different countries such as USA, currency, the contribution of Japan and China in the financial growth of the world, and how does India compare, and we can position India in this whole gamut of the world politics and financial growth. The role of financial institutions such as RBI, very, very important to understand how they manage, impact the internationalization of rupee, use of financial basics to understand the global finance and its impact on G20 initiatives. So once again, a big round of applause for all the dignitaries. A big thank you to Neerti again from RIS, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my students. The Public Policy Club, you can wave, like those of you. Yeah, absolutely. From the India Council, I'm not saying those people, they were here. I would also like to thank our student council, even secretary, and each and every student and a staff member who made this possible today. Not just today, but all the events, the quiz, the writing competition, the modern G20, which we were able to put forward because of their help. So each and every one of you, thank you so much, and thank you to the lovely audience, the students over here, for getting engaged with this. Thank you so much.
Would request everyone to rise for the national anthem.
Guess to say.
Just announce national anthem to cut.
जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल वंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मागे गाए तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे कुठून बोलता सेव्ह हायलाइट ना
बस ना कॅन्सल होच